Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blackshirt Breakdown. My name is Steve Marik. I'm a staff writer inside Nebraska, and that is Jay Foreman, our 8-year NFL veteran and former Nebraska Blackshirt. Jay, we got kind of a curveball episode this week, I guess. We will not be diving into the win over the Iowa Hawkeyes, 24-17. But instead, we have kind of bigger news, kind of holistically about the direction of the program with the hire of Matt Rhule as the next head coach of the Nebraska football program. So, Jay, first of all, what do you think of the hire, and maybe a quick thought on the Hawkeye win too, maybe?
Yeah, it's odd. Every week we were wishing to start it off to where we're having a
Yeah.
talk about Nebraska win and Nebraska win, and they finally win, and we got a new head coach, and so that's what's kind of been always been on the background. But as far as just a little uh thoughts on the game with Iowa, I think it's a great victory. I think the guys fought hard for Mickey. They fought hard for themselves, and it's amazing what effort and continuous effort will do. It forced a team like Iowa to make a ton of mistakes. They weren't used to Nebraska bringing it. I think they may have overlooked Nebraska. And I've always said that this is a year to beat Iowa. This is it. And Wisconsin. So it takes a tremendous amount of courage to get yourself up off the mat one more time when you don't have anything realistically to play for, and it goes without saying the job that Mickey Joseph has done in the short term, being an interim coach. So it's a good victory for Nebraska. It's always good for the whole program as a whole to end on a victory. It gives that good feeling going into the offseason, regardless. Obviously, now that we have a new head coach. It's still a good, it's a good place to be, beating Iowa and ruining their chances of going to the Big Ten championship.
100%. So yeah, let's get into Matt Rhule. So everybody's kind of talking about this. Jay, first of all, what are your overall thoughts on the hire first before we get into maybe kind of what his offense and defense might look like at Nebraska?
I mean, I guess, I was a little surprised, but not surprised. I think his name had kind of been out there ever since, he got fired in Carolina, and whether that was just, people just doing it just because he had success, in college, and people just assumed that he would be up for any college job. Because he built two programs in Temple and or rebuilt programs at Temple and Baylor under unique circumstances. So there might be some correlation to possibly having success here in Nebraska. I know he's a Penn State guy, and I think he walked on at Penn State and made something out of himself. So my initial thoughts of I know he's a good football coach. I know that. I mean, you can't deny that. And I don't really get the record. You can get into it or not, but when you're if you take away those first years, he has a pretty successful record. And also have to be realistic. Like, Nebraska is not in the position right now, with our recent success, to go get a Nick Saban or Urban Meyer. I mean, they're already on the back ends of their career. They're looking for a more easy type of situations. And so, my initial thought was, he's a football coach, and he's a good football coach. And for him to be a good football coach, he's probably been able to do everything that we haven't been able to do in recent 8 years. Put together a good staff, develop and recruit and develop players, both in state and out of state. Probably have an identity that's very clear. I mean, I'm assuming very early in the process. I'm sure he'll talk about that at the press conference, and so you'll have a clear idea. And I think when you see it, when you see what he, or when you hear what he says, you'll see it very clearly in what they're doing. And so, and that's I think everything as far as like coaching and stuff is going to be good. I think the biggest thing with him, since he was a college coach, is that the dynamics of college football has changed. And so now you're dealing with almost semi-pro athletes. So now, relationships are huge. They're so much more paramount than when he was head coach at Baylor. Now, you had to, in order for him to have success at Baylor, he had to have relationships with the players and be able to be on a level to where he can motivate them, hold them accountable, so forth and so on. But now with NIL, where guys are able to compensate or get compensated in some, whatever you want to dice it up as, now you're dealing with semi-pro athletes, not making $10 million as, some of the pro athletes that he had to coach, in Carolina, but you're dealing with guys that might be making upwards of $100,000, $200,000 in NIL deals a year. So you have to make sure that you're treating them on a more of a level of respect versus I'm the head coach and you're on scholarship and I can control your your destiny. Not that he was that like that before, but that's how college coaches really struggled going from college to the NFL, because you don't control these NFL players, and so relationships are going to be huge. And he knows, I think he knows more than ever, being an NFL coach, it's a relationship business. And I think he's, if he's, use it as a positive. If there ever is a positive of getting fired, is learn from it, and then, take whatever positive and negatives and use it all as positive as is in his next coaching job, which is here in Nebraska. And I think he'll do well. I think it's going to just come down to relationships and fit. His football acumen, I think, is second to none, or you feel more than comfortable with that. I think he has the longevity and ability to put together a good staff. So I'm not really worried about that. It is going to come down to fit, and hopefully his time at Penn State and his ties to Penn State and understanding how Penn State works will help him understand and be truly welcoming to how it is there at Nebraska. And if he does that, he'll be more than successful.
And I think Matt Rhule showed kind of a savviness, a coaching savviness, especially when he took that Baylor job, because he had never coached in the state of Texas at all before he got that job. When he got that job, he did an excellent job, in my opinion, of hiring Texas high school football coaches on his staff. And those guys have went on to advance their careers, especially Joey McGuire. He has Texas Tech. He's in the first year as a head coach at Texas Tech right now, has them going to a bowl game. But just Matt Rhule hiring those three assistant coaches from the Texas high school football ranks just shows, that he was serious about kind of getting into the culture and getting into the state of Texas and getting his name out there and creating relationships, like you said, Jay. And so I'm really interested in how Matt's going to, Coach Rhule is going to do that in Nebraska. And I would assume he's got a pretty good head start right now, and maybe just with Mickey Joseph and trying to find out what he wants to do with Mickey Joseph, because everybody knows Mickey here. Everybody likes Mickey here. And obviously the recruiting standpoint, the coaching standpoint, he's one of the best assistants in the country.
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to, you got to have superior confidence in yourself to have the wherewithal and ability to hire somebody that's really good at their job. And that's Mickey Joseph. You can't be threatened by that. Mickey's a Nebraska guy. He's going to do the right thing. He has brothers in the profession in both college he has a cousin at University of Texas. His other brother is a defensive coordinator in the NFL. Mickey's been in and around any type of situation as far as college football goes, and he's going to do what's right by Nebraska. And Mickey's going to do his job. Mickey be coaching in Alaska. He's going to recruit, and he's going to develop, and he's going to do what's right for the team. And so that should be priority number one for him, to find a way to make that work, or hopefully find a way to make that work, and take the same approach that he did at Baylor. This guy is going to help you, hit the ground running and be along with what you want to do. And I think Matt Rhule, being in the coaching profession and knowing, I don't think he has the attitude of, I'm Matt Rhule. Well, hopefully he doesn't have the attitude of, I'm Matt Rhule, whatever I say goes, and I don't want to listen to anybody. We've seen that not work. I don't think some of the personality issues that you had before will ring true with Matt Rhule. I just don't, and I don't know for sure, but I just think he's more of a mature guy, and just a little bit farther along the process, and been through some ins and outs. And he's had to grind his way out there. He never was handed a job. I'm sure when he got done coaching or playing at Penn State, whenever he got done, he didn't have a job already lined up for him. He had to go and beat the path. So he has that in him, and I don't think he's ever lost it. So it's a totally different dynamic with a guy that has a unique personality, or could be perceived to have a unique personality, coming here. As long as he, tries to, do right by Mickey and a couple other guys on the staff, I think he'll do well. And I think he knows that. And hopefully he puts forth a good foot in trying to do so, because having the ability to recruit in and around Nebraska and Louisiana, and there's coaches with Texas ties, and there's coaches with Georgia ties, will allow him not to have that year where you go 1-11. I mean, we just won 4 games with an interim coach. So you're coming in, and the culture has changed for the better. And so that's where I think he could do himself a really good service of of addressing those things and adding those to it, and then getting in line and roll with it.
Yeah, and those other assistants, popular choices, I guess, to stick on the staff along with Mickey, Brian Applewhite, Bill Bush, and then maybe even Sean Beckton. We know he's huge in Georgia and Florida. That's really important. So, Jay, I know it's really hard to get into this right now because there have not been assistant hires right now, especially with the OC and the DC. But when you look at Matt Rhule's past in college, especially at Baylor, what might Nebraska's offense, or what did Matt Rhule like to do offensively and defensively?
Well, first offensively, it was curtailed to his personnel,
Yep.
right? So even when he was at Temple, they were a physical team. They were an exciting team. They were physical on defense. They competed on offense and defense from a physicality standpoint. That's what really I think allowed them to separate themselves at that time from other teams in their conference. And so they ran a lot more RPO. But they had PJ Walker, who was obviously an RPO threat. They had a decent running game, an explosive passing game. But the line play was good on both sides of the ball, and fundamentally sound and stuff like that. So that's what you can expect. And then when we went to Baylor, he came in, I think, after Art Briles. He told him, they said, look, man, that stuff is over. We're going to still pass the ball, but we're going to we're going to be physical from the get-go. And that's what he did. I think Baylor had 2 running backs that were pretty good. One, I think, got drafted. And the quarterback was more of an RPO threat, but they were explosive along in the pass game and had a pretty good route tree. They didn't have their RPO isn't trying to fool you. Their RPO is going to beat you, and then they're going to run pro-style routes. So you saw receivers there get drafted or get looks at the NFL even after he left. And so I think right there where people think, okay, well, he ran RPO, that's not Michigan, but you can get to it if you make a conscious effort to it. Look, he's a defensive lineman, I think, by trade. Okay, so he's going to know what the trenches are like, and for him to walk on and earn playing time at Penn State, he knows the importance of offense and defensive line. That's one thing I know he knows. And that's what he did at both schools to regain or to gain an edge and to lessen his disadvantage as far as facing teams that had better athletes. And so I think their offensive line is going to be well coached. I think that he's going to start there, and it's not going to be overnight. I think you're going to see a physical approach to it in an RPO type of game, and it's difference. And so if I could give you an example of the Urban Meyer spread RPO offense versus, say, Oregon's spread RPO offense, that's the difference. I think he more teeters towards the Urban Meyer physical type of stuff. If you want a realistic view to look at, maybe like a Utah that's about to play USC next week in the Pac-12 championship. So right there, that gives you, should give you some excitement and also feels comfortable that he knows what it takes to win here. I don't think he's coming to the Big Ten thinking that he's going to fool anybody. I don't think he's coming to the Big Ten thinking he's going to run an offense that nobody's ever seen before. I don't think he's coming to the Big Ten and think he's going to possibly out-recruit Ohio State and Michigan. What I think he's going to come in and do is build it from the lines, and I call that the ground up, offensive, defensive line. Find guys that are football players, develop them on and off the field, and then you're going to see guys come in at one level and leave at another level, and you're going to start to see the consistency, if everything goes right, of guys not only being good players at Nebraska, but then being a go to the next level and be good football players, and then flip to defensive wise. They ran a four-man front, which I'm a big believer in. They had good linebacker play, good defensive, back play. They were they were aggressive, but they were smart, and they were, a good Big 12 defense. Now, playing defense in the Big 12 is a little different than in the Big 10, so that'll be where I'll see the adjustment. But I think the four-man front and building within the offense and defensive lines is going to give him an advantage to do some of the things that were successful at Baylor. But I'll also say this, and I know, you can't reference success in the NFL or what happened in the NFL versus college, but even when Carolina was struggling on offense, their defense kept them in the game. And he'll tell you that. So that's also something that you could gain confidence of, that he knows that, look, we got to play some defense, to keep us going when we're, not playing well on offense. And so I think he'll adapt to his personnel and adapt to who he's playing against, and I think that it'll just come down to personality and fit, and if that works out, then I think that the tenure will be successful. And as far as football coaching, that dude's a football coach.
And one last one before we get out here, the quarterback. So when you talk about run pass option offense, it's obviously heavily geared toward the quarterback and making quick decisions and being confident in his reads and his decisions back there. Casey Thompson his status right now is up in the air. He's got a lot going on. The injury history that he had.
Yeah.
He mentioned that he'll like to talk to the next head coach after the Iowa game. And so I'm sure he'll be talking with Matt Rhule here soon. But when you look at Casey Thompson, he'll be a 6th-year guy next year if he does come back. Do you see him as a good fit with kind of an RPO based offense?
Yeah, I think Casey got a bad rap where people didn't think he could run. Casey's a good athlete. His dad was a phenomenal runner, and so Casey can throw the ball as well. I think he fits well in this offense. I think if you look at PJ Walker's probably a little bit more elusive, but if you look at his quarterback at Baylor and say Sam Darnold and stuff like that, I think it's not going to be exclusively RPO, but Casey's a good decision maker. Mm-hmm. I think Matt Rhule will come in and demand better play from the offensive line. He'll go out and, I'm assuming, recruit other offensive line players and so forth and so on. This is even if he keeps Coach Raiola, which I think probably deserves a chance at having a decent roster of players. But that's another black shirt breakdown. But I think Casey fits in. I think he probably knows about Casey, from being at Baylor, or obviously when he was leaving, he probably knew about Casey. Yep. Casey's been successful. He knows having a good quarterback that has unique leadership ability, that's a tough kid, is a great way to start your program. And year one, knowing that Casey has one more year left, would be a great starting point for him. It's not 3 or 4 years, where you can't, you can maybe scare off other quarterbacks. You could bring in other quarterbacks. Casey can show them the way, or get them to emulate him, how he works, how he deals with the media, how he's coachable, because you can coach him tough. So I think it's a good match, but it's going to come down to what Matt Rhule wants. He's the head coach, but if I voted, I definitely would like Casey to be back, because I think another year in Nebraska with Matt Rhule and whoever his offensive coordinator will serve him well. His pro experience helps Casey out if he has aspirations to go to the next level. Mm-hmm. Casey helps Matt Rhule out as well. So, I think it's one of those things that could definitely be, good match. And so, if I had to rank them, Mickey Joseph number 1, Casey Thompson 1B. And if you get Mickey Joseph and you get Casey Thompson, you are way ahead of any other new coach in their regime across the nation as far as being somewhat successful in this first year in building a program. They're both program builders in their aspect of what they're at, and we'll see what happens. And that's going to be as much as who he hires on the staff, as much as who he keeps around. Will be plenty of, I'm assuming, black shirt breakdowns or quick snippets or Twitter conversations that we're going to have here for the next 2 or 3 months. So we're about to be pretty busy.
Oh yeah, it's going to heat up here quick. But I love what you said about obviously Mickey Joseph. That's a given in my opinion. It's obvious that he needs to be on this staff. But with Casey Thompson, if you can swing it to get a 6th-year guy coming back, that's basically another assistant coach playing quarterback for you.
Right.
So yeah, I think that should be a top priority, like you said. But yeah, man. So yeah, it is starting right now. I'm excited for this. Press conference will be Monday at 1:30. Stick to Inside Nebraska. .rivals.com. We will have all the coverage there, and we'll have plenty more black shirt breakdowns with Jay here. Jay, any last final thoughts before we get out of here?
Well, I mean, look, everybody's waiting for tomorrow, the press conference, and should be excitement. Support the program. Just like you'd support it if Mickey was the head coach. And new regime is good, and so let's see where it goes, and always go Big Red.
For sure. All right, for Jay Foreman, I am Steve Marik, and that was a Black Shirt Breakdown. We'll see you next time.